What label might define your life right now? And if you're kind of thinking, what do you mean by labels? Let me run a few by you. Old, young, gay, straight, married, single, fit, sick. You kind of get the idea, right? What I've noticed in my life is that labels sometimes come into our neurology without us even noticing. They go underneath the radar. And what happens is they kind of affect how we show up in the world. Being told you have cancer is not anything you can really ever plan for. And yet in 2014, I was diagnosed with kidney cancer. And with that came 3 labels really quickly. One was cancer patient, one was cancer victim, and the other was cancer sufferer. Now, at some level, the cancer patient kind of serves because it allows you to be put into a box, medicated and treated, which I'm really grateful for. But the cancer sufferer and cancer victim, definitely not. What I decided to do was develop something that would allow me to decide what labels would I accept and what labels would I delete. And I'm going to share that with you in a second. What I decided to do once I was diagnosed with that disease was to embark on it with a label of being an adventurer. I'd never been into hospital before, let alone had surgery. So it was kind of like, how do I want to view this? I went in with the eyes of an adventurer, and I asked the anaesthetist on the morning of surgery if I could go down to the operating theatre and see what it looked like. She agreed. I was really pleased she did. We went in and I met the team. The operating theatre was like super, super shiny. It was like walking into a Star Wars movie. And the table that they were going to operate on was so tiny. I was like, how on earth am I even going to stay on there? And she was like, oh, don't worry, we'll strap you down. So learning to have that label was really helpful to me because it allowed me to experience it totally differently. Now, let me share with you how I used the delete button the very first time. Whilst I was in hospital, a lady came to visit me and she was telling me about this documentary she'd seen where another lady had given away a kidney to somebody that really needed it. She also shared with me that apparently when the human body loses an organ, then the human body can go into a deep decline and become really depressed. And I am like, at what level is this serving me? And I used my delete button, and this is kind of how it goes. You imagine the big red button, you imagine the white lettering across it that says delete, and this is what you do inside your head. Delete, 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 as loud as you can inside your head, and imagine that button kind of lighting up each time. You're actively and consciously deleting the label that you don't want to accept. It's important you do it inside your head though, otherwise that would be kind of a bit weird. Imagine that you come home from work, you're absolutely exhausted, and your 6-year-old comes up to you, they're really excited to see you and they want to play. And you're like, I need to do a few emails, and then I'm totally there for them. You remember that in a magazine you were flicking through earlier that day, there was a map of the world, so you rip it out, you tear the map of the world up into tiny pieces, you put it on the floor, and you've made like a little homemade jigsaw. You give your 6-year-old the tape to stick it back together again, and you make it fun for them. And you say, when you've done that, I'll be totally here and we can play a game. You see, life is a little like that. It's deciding which pieces do we want to stick together so that it becomes the fabric of our life with the labels that we choose to have. I remember a time when I didn't have my delete button. I was working for Estee Lauder in Rackham's Bradford selling lipsticks and fragrance. I had a lovely time. But one of the things I wanted to do was to have a career with them. I was 19 years of age. I was told I was way too young. But yet I got a job working as a training executive. I was the youngest training executive in the Estee Lauder Corporation to be promoted at that time. And at some level, I always believed that I was a little bit too young. Even though I excelled, even though I did a great job, I often wonder what life would have been like if I hadn't have had that label installed. Another time a label affected me, when I didn't have my delete button, was when I met and fell in love with Keith. I was told he was way too old. He was older than me. And even though we got married and we had this wonderful life together, at some level, I believed that that was true. At some level, I believed that he was too old. I do a lot of things for charity and some crazy events. And one of the events that I did was run across Portugal, which is a marathon a day for 7 days. And you get a sense the type of labels that were sort of installed or attempted to be installed was, you're going to get injured. You can't do that. It's too hard for you. Not at your age. I was 41. So you can imagine, delete, delete, delete. None of that serves you when you've got to run a marathon every single day for 7 days. The other label I got was Crazy Lady, which I kind of quite like, so I didn't delete that. Now, when I was in hospital in Christchurch, if somebody had tapped me on the shoulder and said, a year tomorrow, you're going to lose your husband Keith, I would never have believed them. And yet a year and a day later, I lost my beautiful husband, Keith, and a new label came with that, the label of a widow. Delete, delete, delete. That did not serve me. People treated me differently. People looked at me differently. People didn't talk about the future. It was a label that was definitely not going to serve me. I was running around the lake here in Queenstown, beautiful Lake Hayes, with my gorgeous friend Vicky. And as I'm following her, she stopped in her tracks. I practically ran into her. And she said, Amanda, your life is like a beautiful canvas. One half of it is being painted, it's rich, it's textured, and that's up until the point that Keith passed away. And the other half is completely blank. You can put whatever you like on that. And trust me, I got my designer label kit out and I started to put in labels there like magician. I wanted to have some magic in my life. I wanted to go to Burning Man. I wanted to fall in love again. I wanted to be a hopeless romantic. Now, somebody that has had 3 long-term relationships, one 10 years with a really hot fireman, one 5 years and then sadly divorced, and then one 19 years with beautiful Keith, and all with men, would have the label of being straight, right? Except this time, I fell in love with a woman. And the immediate label I was given was, oh, you're gay. Delete, delete, delete. I'm not gay. I'm not straight. I'm Amanda. I just happened to fall in love with a soul that happens to be attached to a female body. And therefore, being in control of those labels really allows you to navigate your life on your terms. Even my lovely mum said to me, Amanda, you're not gay, you're grieving. Delete, delete, delete. At no level is that going to serve me. Creating your life on your terms means you get to choose which label you want to have in your life. Sarah and I got married in Portugal in 2016. Beautiful wedding at a vineyard there. We even went to Burning Man for our honeymoon, which was absolutely epic. And then we decided we wanted to have a family. Now, when you're 52 and you start to share with people that you're going to go on an IVF journey and have children, trust me, that label of you're too old comes right into place. Delete, delete, delete. At no level is that going to help us. The IVF journey, another label, that's hard. Delete, delete, delete. Doesn't serve us at all. And yet we embarked on that journey, and the label we chose was an adventure that was fun, that was eventually going to get us what we wanted. And boy, did it. On the 9th of May 2019, 2 beautiful baby boys, Noah and Jasper, were born in Invercargill, New Zealand. We were a family, and with that came a new label, same-sex family. Sarah and I were a little bit too busy with twin boys. We didn't get out the delete button. We didn't delete that. And questions we got asked were, who's the dad? Every child deserves to have a father. We've used our delete button so many times to navigate our life on our terms, to create the fabric of our life out of the labels that we want to include and delete the ones that we don't want. I'd really encourage you to do the same thing. Now, that 6-year-old finishes that map of the world so quickly, you're like, oh my goodness, how did they do that so fast? You're not even through your first email. And you say, my goodness, you've put the map of the world together. And the 6-year-old looks at you and says, no, it was really easy. All I needed to do was stick the lady that was on the back of the map, stick her back together. And once she was back together, the world took care of itself.